Why are guarantees offered at all? Well, for two reasons. The goddamn sun. Seriously? In this video, I'm going to be talking about one of the most important topics in hair transplant surgery, at least to me anyway, and that is the myth of the hair transplant guarantee. Welcome to hair transplant class number 24. Hey everyone, welcome to the Hair Transplant channel. My name is Joe Tillman, and this is the official YouTube channel for hairtransplantmentor.com. And if you don't know what a hair transplant mentor is, just head on over to learn all about it. Now, before we get started, I want to tell you more about the next contest. I'm trying to get 25,000 subscribers, and this time I'm giving away not one, but 3 one-year supplies of GrowMD shampoo. Last month, I hit 20,000 subscribers, and one lucky winner who goes by the handle Blur Productions, he won. He was sent his year supply of GrowMD shampoo, and after that was done, Dr. Yazdan of Modena Hair in Beverly Hills in Las Vegas said, hey, you know what? Let's expand the contest by offering it to 3 lucky winners. So here we are. I don't make any money on this. I don't sell it. I just like it and use it myself. It's a good contest for a good shampoo. Make sure you're subscribed and make a comment down below about this video and why you should win a year supply of GrowMD shampoo to be entered into the contest. I'll pick the winners at random, and make sure your contact email is in your own About section on your own YouTube channel so I can contact you. Makes sense, right? It was kind of tough before. Final comments before we get into the topic for today is that if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, as I do need and appreciate all of the support I can get, and do please like this video if you find it to be useful and informative. Right, so back to the video. This is an important topic for me that I've been giving a lot of thought to. I've mentioned it several times on the show, Spencer Kobren's The Bald Truth with me, Joe Tillman, but I've never really gone into any great detail about the issue, and it is an issue. I want to be real with you. I don't want to have to resort to using graphs and props and images of different clinics and stuff because it doesn't really apply. I'm just going to have a chat with you about something that's very important to me about your safety. Now, I talk about a lot of different issues regarding the hair transplant industry and the terrible things that you need to be aware of in order to stay safe. I also talk a lot about the great things that can be achieved with hair transplant surgery, but that's usually when I'm talking about the various hair transplant clinics that meet my standards for how they operate. And when I say operate, I mean how they run their clinics as well as how they operate on you, the patient. But I haven't spoken much about the marketing that some hair transplant clinics utilize to stand out from their competition. I mean, I have spoken about some of the things to look out for, such as the different hair transplant associations that clinics say they're proud to be a part of and what they really mean. And I've talked about some of the silly things that clinics advertise about, or even when fraudulent clinics use images from other clinics. But that's about it. So in this hair transplant class, class number 24, I'm going to be digging into the psychology of the hair transplant guarantee and why you should avoid clinics that offer these guarantees. Why are guarantees offered at all? Well, there's usually 2 reasons. 1, as a way of getting you to commit to having surgery. It's just that simple. That should be pretty obvious. Clinics that offer guarantees usually need to offer a guarantee of some sort, which I'll get into later, just to grab your attention, or they use it to close the deal. There are some clinics that have results that are so consistently good that they can confidently offer a guarantee because they know that patients will rarely need to cash in on the guarantee, and the number of times that they do is easily offset by the general success rate and the assumed increased patient base grown from their excellent reputation. Both reasons do not justify offering guarantees, and in many cases, it's simply unethical to do so. Did I just get your attention? What is a guarantee in the first place? To explore that, we first need to understand the sales process at a hair transplant clinic. Now, this is a very complex subject that I won't dive too deep into, but the surface basics are as follows in the context of this discussion. A salesperson or a doctor at a good hair transplant clinic will use the truth and the facts about what they do to simply educate the patient, and they won't resort to tricks or pressure to help the patient make their decision. They'll reference facts that separate them from the competition without actually bad-mouthing the competition. And sometimes, if they're smart, they'll talk about the reputable organizations that they've been accepted to based on the quality of their work and the ethics of their clinics, such as the IAHRS or even Hair Transplant Mentor, and point out that relatively few clinics have such credentials. They'll maybe make some follow-up calls or emails to see if the lead has any more questions, but generally in the end, they'll let the patient come back to them when they're ready. A consultant or doctor at a bad hair transplant clinic will talk badly about their competition as a deflection of their own shortcomings. They'll avoid direct questions. They'll use pressure tactics such as offering specials that are only valid during that day or week of your consultation. And the funny thing is that these specials won't be advertised on their website, meaning that they just made it up to get you to say yes to surgery while you're in their office. And another tactic is to contact the lead a few days after their consultation to tell them that another patient canceled at the last minute, and if they can fill the spot in a few weeks, they'll get a discount. Remind me to tell you more about that one in the comments section below. The good consultants at bad clinics will use specialized separation tactics to sell the dream, not the product. In fact, there's an old saying in sales from the 1920s that when a person goes into a hardware store to buy a drill bit, they're not actually looking to buy a drill bit, but instead, they're looking to buy the hole that the drill bit makes. In hair transplant sales, the analogy would be selling the dream of needing a hairdryer, or the classic one about the wind in your hair while you're driving your convertible. That's the dream they're selling, not the product. And by avoiding talking about the product itself, it's easier to sell the product as a dream. Make sense? So in the same line of thinking, a guarantee is designed to make you feel more comfortable with saying yes to having a hair transplant, where normally you might not be so eager to sign on the dotted line. This is where using a guarantee to close a deal is a bad thing. Next, we have to break down why guarantees are offered. And it really depends on which clinic is offering the guarantee, as there are two different kinds. There's the satisfaction guarantee and the graft growth guarantee. It would seem only natural to include the money-back guarantee, but in this list, they simply don't exist in the industry. At least not so blatantly advertised as such. But the other two guarantees do hint at being money-back guarantees, at least sometimes in the fine print. But for now, we're mostly going to leave the money-back guarantee out of this discussion, as they are usually reserved for products such as laser helmets sold by companies that enlist YouTubers like myself to promote their products. About those kinds of products and their guarantees, here's a hint. They know you're too lazy to box up a helmet and ship it back to the company, and no, they don't pay for the return shipping. Unlike other brands, we offer you a full 12 months to try our system without asking you to pay for restocking fees or return shipping if it doesn't work. Try our products today. What's this? You may return the helmet for a full refund of the purchase price less the shipping cost. It's true. Let's start by exploring the satisfaction guarantee. I think the problem with this one is pretty obvious, as how does one define satisfaction? I ask this because I've seen several results in person that I felt were stunning successes. I mean, really transformative results that, if seen online, and some were, would blow people away. But the patients themselves were less than impressed and even downright angry with their result because their perception of the result was that it was a failure for various reasons. Never forget that one's perception equals one's reality. So with that scenario aside, what happens if you're not satisfied with your result? What is the promise you were given with the guarantee? Is this a promise of giving your money back? Is it a promise of a second procedure at no charge? It can be either, usually the latter. But it's a bad idea for any clinic to offer a satisfaction guarantee because no one can define what satisfaction actually means. And in cases like this, what should be satisfying is decided in the end by the clinic and not the patient, because what may seem to be an obvious failure or an obvious success is sometimes not very clear, even when it is. Next up is the graft growth guarantee. When you think about this one, the issue should be pretty obvious, but I've learned that it actually isn't to a lot of people, and that's why it's so commonly offered and so commonly accepted by the patient as being a legitimate guarantee. But just as with the satisfaction guarantee, how do we determine the success or failure? In this case, how do we measure exactly how many grafts grew or how many grafts did not? I can't count how many times I've seen a patient online say they think that they've had only about 70% growth after 12 months, or maybe 14 months or longer, when in reality they have no idea. And by the time they get to the clinic that they had their surgery with, they've already gotten such a bad taste in their mouth and their opinion is already so poisoned that anything short of a full admission of failure by the clinic simply won't be acceptable. But the clinic will state that their guarantee promises a growth rate of anywhere between 80% and I've seen as high as 95%, which is really quite difficult, if not impossible, to quantify. When you think about it, you really do have to count each and every graft that was placed to see if there is a hair or hairs growing where it was placed. Two big problems prevent this from being possible. First, patients have to shave their scalps in order for the clinic to have a clear view of the recipient area so they can properly count each graft. How many of you would be willing to do this without surgery being scheduled that same day? I guess that not many of you would. Reason number two, with the average person having at least 10 to 20% of all hair on their head in the telogen phase at any given time, even if all the grafts are growing, which they rarely do, the telogen percentage can drastically reduce the number of grafts that have visible growth, thereby nullifying any count that is made. There are other factors that prevent the truth from being known, both by the patient and the clinic, but you get the point. Guarantees are useless in all but the most obvious cases of poor growth, where counting the 3 hairs that did wind up growing would be silly. So what if both patient and the clinic agree that the growth should have been better? The clinic will usually offer a second procedure at no cost. Now, sometimes patients will refuse and instead insist on a full refund, but this is rarely a successful approach and usually leads to conflict either online or behind the scenes, and sometimes both, which can get really ugly. That's a topic for a different discussion, but only serves to reinforce why guarantees are a bad idea. It's because they rarely work out, as most clinics will fight tooth and nail against giving a refund, and in many cases will fight just as hard to avoid having to perform a second surgery at no cost if they disagree with the outcome. And honestly, in most cases, you don't want to have a second surgery because you've already lost donor hair from the first. Again, this is a subject for a different video, but in short, only consider a second surgery if the clinic does in fact have a solid reputation, in good standing, and you haven't discovered they're a hack clinic that relies on private WhatsApp groups set up by the clinic, Instagram where they have maybe purchased 100,000 followers, or real self-reviews or what clinic reviews to justify their reputation. Assuming the clinic agrees that the growth should have been better, the next question is obvious. What went wrong? I'll be blunt. They usually won't know because there are so many factors involved with a successful hair transplant. The reasons you'll hear, however, are predictable. Starting off with number one of the technicians was having an off day. One of the technicians was new. Your grafts were popping too much, which meant the techs had to reinsert the grafts multiple times, which can lead to damage. This is sometimes a legitimate problem. You smoked. You didn't follow the post-op instructions. And this is the most likely culprit, the X factor. What is the X factor? Well, it means that they don't know why the grafts didn't grow, because even when a top clinic does everything right, sometimes the grafts just don't grow. It's to varying degrees of severity, and it's simply chalked up to the patient's physiology, because they can't nail down a reason if they're doing everything that they did the day before and the day before that with previous patients that had great results. And this is a legitimate issue because, as they say, this is the practice of medicine. It isn't absolute and isn't perfect, and since you're dealing with a non-renewable resource of donor hair, offering a guarantee of any sort is just wrong, in my opinion, because it creates a false sense of security about the final outcome that I personally do not think should be in medicine in general. In fact, it isn't, as you don't generally see guarantees in other areas of cosmetic surgery, save for maybe the guarantees of the experience as opposed to the outcome. And this is in areas where your surgery is not dependent on a non-renewable resource like hair. Have a bad nose job? Well, you can go back and fix it because you don't have to worry about running out of noses to put on your face. It just makes sense. But what if a top clinic, one that has legitimate credentials and has a really good reputation, offers a guarantee? Are they trying to con you? No, not usually. When I was putting this video together in my head, I spoke to several of my hair transplant mentor members and even about a dozen other doctors that I personally know but don't work with about this issue. And some of them did say they offered a growth guarantee. The reason they did was because they stand behind their work. And I think it's great that a clinic stands behind their work because they're proud of their work. And I think that, they believe in their capabilities. I mean, their reputations justify it. And they should stand behind their work because the clinics I work with and the other doctors I spoke with are damn good at what they do. But after our discussions, they all agreed that offering a blanket guarantee is different than standing behind their work. Because as you can see from what I said above, guarantees are pretty damned impossible to deliver when the end product is so difficult to quantify. The only guarantee that should be offered and can legitimately be offered is the guarantee of the clinic's best effort when you are in their chair. Guarantees do not mean you get more donor hair to work with. You still only have as much as you were born with. Guarantees do not mean that the second surgery designed to address the first failure will mean that the problem will be fixed. In fact, most failed surgeries need 2 more surgeries on average just to get to where the first one was supposed to get you. And this is why I have a problem with hair transplant guarantees. Sometimes the clinics may mean well, but in the end, they're used by bad clinics to get you to say yes to surgery, and they're used by some good clinics to simply show that they care. In both cases, it's potentially dangerous, and in some countries, it's considered to be inducing the patient into having surgery, which is considered to be unethical. That's why moving forward, all hair transplant mentor members have agreed to refrain from using such guarantees, aside from the guarantee of their best effort. If they tell you they'll stand by their work, and they do, that's great. But this position is intended to make sure you never forget that surgery is always the last resort. So you have to ask yourself this question if you're considering hair transplant surgery. If my surgery isn't a success for whatever reason, does the clinic have such a reputation that I trust them to fix any problems that come up? This is the question to ask yourself regardless of any guarantees. And this all ties back to the very first hair transplant class, class number 1. Do not have a hair transplant, which you can find right here. If you're not ready to deal with a bad outcome, maybe you should think more about having surgery and if it's right for you before you move forward with surgery. Guarantees do not prevent bad results. They only mean you're having more surgery when you didn't plan on having them in the first place. If you do move forward, you can't undo what is done to you. You can only move forward with more surgeries to try to achieve what you had hoped for the first time. I'm Joe Tillman, and thanks for watching. Peace.